It's midway through July. I'm not quite sure how we got here. So that means it is time for me to join the bandwagon and everyone else on BookTube and do my mid-year freakout. Because I kind of am. Hey everyone, it's Ray and welcome to my little bookish corner of the world where I talk everything books on a sort of weekly basis. Yeah, not quite reliable at the moment, but it is getting better. So today I'm going to be doing, as many booktubers have done in the last couple of weeks, my mid-year freakout, because yeah, I have read 66 books, I believe. Might be 68. Actually, it's 68 because I'm on books 73, 74 and 75 at this moment in time because I can't just read one book. One is the overarching book of the month and the other two are books that I have got a very, very tight deadline on. But I will be talking about those at a later date. Anyway, let's start with the first question. Best book you've read so far in 2024? That's tough as I can't include the book I finished towards the beginning of July because it doesn't count. So I am going to go with Six Crimson Cranes by Elizabeth Lim, which was, I think, the fantastic start to a sort of Chinese mythology, Chinese history duology. And I've actually read both Six Crimson Cranes and The Dragon's Promise in the last 6 months, or the first 6 months of the year. Under the Whispering Door by T.J. Klune, that had actually been on my bookcase for a considerable period of time, and though I have read his Green Creek series, and I've also read In the Lives of Puppets, Under the Cerulean Sea, The House in the Cerulean Sea, and others by him, I had not read Under the Whispering Door, which I have now, and it made me cry quite a lot. Empire of the Vampire by J. Kristoff was an interesting one. I wasn't sure if I was going to read it. I'd read his two sci-fi trilogies with Amy Kaufman, and people had been recommending Nevernight, which I've also started this year, and Empire of the Vampire. And when Empire of the Damned was released in a stunning deep red, I think it's behind me there, special edition, I knew I had to not only pick up the first book but also make sure I had a hardback edition of it. So I read that really quickly. It was surprisingly a very enjoyable and speedy read despite it being of considerable size. And the last one was Goodbye Birdie Greenwing by Erica Waller. It is, I don't know how much I can say about that book that isn't, it made me cry a lot. It's beautifully written. It's a book about friendship, discovery, growth and grief, and all of those things together make for a wonderfully told story. So if you haven't read that already and you like a women's lit, more serious but also comedic book, then I definitely say pick that one up. Question 2. Best sequel you've read so far in 2024? There's actually 3 again on this list. First one is Elusive by Genevieve Cogman, which is the sequel to her book Scarlet that came out last year. It is a vampiric retelling of the Scarlet Pimpernel based in revolutionary France and England in the same era. And it is a story of class, of war, of cooperation and status, and very, very well written and enjoyable to read. It was a quick one. For me, it was a NetGalley copy, the same as Scarlet was last year, but it's definitely up there with The Invisible Library, which I also enjoyed a few years ago. Next one is Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. Godkiller was in my top 10 countdown of 2023, and Sunbringer at this moment in time is probably going to be up there too. It continues where Godkiller ended. And it's more about character development this time. Godkiller was very much about telling the tale of the history of the world that we were being brought into. So it was world building and developing the faith system, the magical system that exists, and the history of the characters. And Sunbringer was very much more, I think, character building. We were getting far more history of these characters, seeing their development and their growth, and also their past diverged, and kind of it made them develop far more, grow far more as characters, as individuals. You didn't only get to see them as playing off each other, which I appreciated. And the next one was The Queen of Poisons by Robert Thorogood. Now, I cannot... I can't, it wouldn't be me if I wasn't talking at some point about a cozy mystery. And I have enjoyed for the last few years the Robert Thorogood Marlowe mystery series, the Marlowe Murder Club, starting with Marlowe Murder Club, going on to Death Comes to Marlowe, and this year, in paperback at least, it came out at the end of 2023 in hardback, The Queen of Poisons, which is a fantastic addition to the series. And if you like Richard Osman, I mean, I'm personally not a huge fan of his books, but if you do like Richard Osman, you like the cozy mystery format, and you like older characters, then you will probably enjoy these. I think he's very clever with the way that he uses his characters and the situations. And I do believe that comes a bit from having experience in screenwriting, because he is the creator of one of my favourite cozy mystery series, Death in Paradise. So yeah, I cannot ignore that one. So that was best sequel I've read in 2024, and there were 3 of them. New release you haven't read yet but want to. There's 2 in this one, and they are actually both YA. The first one is Hearts That Cut by Kika Hatsupulo. That is the sequel to Threads That Bind. I was just about to have a look on my shelf, and that is one of the... This side. No, this side. No, it is this side. Yay, I'm really coordinated. It is a Greek mythology retelling. Well, not retelling, it is building on the Greek mythological pantheon with descendants of the Greek gods having access to their strengths, their powers, and their abilities. And I enjoyed the first book, Threads That Bind, and I really wanted to read the second. So when it came out, I was a bit disappointed it didn't have sprayed edges like the first one, but you can't have everything. So that is on my shelf to read, and it came out in, I think, the end of June. And the next one is actually one that came out, really, it came out at the beginning of July, so does it really count? But it is The Vengeance of the Pirate Queen by Tricia Levenseller. However, I haven't read Daughter of the Siren Queen yet either. I was waiting until this one came out in paperback before I picked the second one up off the shelf. I did read Daughter of the Pirate King, really enjoyed it, love that wild seas and strong female character narrative. So I'm looking forward to reading both Daughter of the Siren Queen and Vengeance of the Pirate Queen at some point in the next 5 and a bit months that we've got left of this year. Most anticipated release for the second half of the year. Well, my most anticipated release for this year did come out in July, and that was Babylonia by Costanza Casati. However, I have already read and finished that one, devoured it in 5 hours, and I will post a link to the video where I talk all about how much I enjoyed that book, why I enjoyed it, and why I think you should read that. And I'll post a link in the info box down below. However, there are a few others coming out at the end of towards the latter part of this year that I am looking forward to, including Somewhere Beyond the Sea, which is by TJ Klune, and the sequel to House in the Cerulean Sea. Much anticipated by many people I've spoken to, including, and of course, I am also looking forward to it, and that comes out in September, at least in the UK. So that one is one on my list. Another is I Haven't Been Entirely Honest with You by Miranda Hart. I enjoy her writing. I think there's something about her tone. Everything about her character comes across in her writing. And I have got the first autobiography or memoir that she released. I want to say it was about 15 years ago, and I enjoyed it. I found it quite enlightening because, of course, you see who Miranda Hart is on the screen, and there is something about her personality that is quite endearing. I also went and saw her at the O2 years ago when she was on tour. I want to say it was probably about 10, 12 years ago. God, that makes me where's the time gone? Seriously, it does feel like a very long time ago. And I went to see that with my mum, my sister, and my sister's mother-in-law. And my niece was supposed to go, but she ended up having to go into hospital for an operation, but that's another story. So I think that is another book that I'm looking forward to. And I'm not a massive purchaser of non-fiction in any of its forms, though right now I'm looking up on my shelf and I have got Brat, an 80s story by Andrew McCarthy up there waiting to be read, because I have just watched Brat's the documentary on the Disney Channel, and it is making me think that I need to do a kind of bit of a deep dive. I'm an 80s girl and I was a teen in the 80s, so it is something. I watched all of these things happen in the newspapers. Of course, we didn't have the internet back then. So, yeah, it's going to be interesting to read his perspective on things and see how that translated into the documentary that he also made. And the last book that I'm looking forward to, well, there's several, is All the Devils by Caitlin Wilson. I'm not even sure why I'm looking forward to it, but I believe it's dark academia from the blurb that I have read. So tell me if I'm wrong. And I want to give that genre another try because I haven't had a great relationship with it so far. Biggest disappointment so far? There have been a few. The first one is The Ministry of Time by Kellyanne Bradley. And every time I read someone's review of it and they're being supremely positive, I wonder if I missed something when I was reading it. And then I think, well, no, my opinion's different to theirs. So does it really matter? I personally found that it had incredible potential. There was so much that could have been done with the storyline. But the fact that she used a real person in amongst all these fictional characters just didn't sit well with me. So it was a huge disappointment from that perspective. Another one was A Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal. I got the proof of that last year. I was sent it as part of a competition win that I don't even remember entering, but very, very grateful all the same. And it was touted as Peaky Blinders meets Six of Crows, and it felt like almost a carbon copy, but not quite as good as Six of Crows. I did finish it, and I have got a special edition copy from Fairy Loot, but that copy is going to be wending its way at some point. I keep on saying this. At some point, I will update my Vinted, and I will post a link to it when I do, but I will be getting rid of or selling on at market value, not high trading prices. I will be selling off the special editions that just didn't personally appeal to me, but I know that there is an audience, and I know that a lot of people did enjoy this book. And the next one, actually two by the same author, Not in Love, which I DNF'd at about 130 something pages, and Bride by Ali Hazelwood. Bride I did finish, and I can honestly say it's the last book by her I'm going to finish, because Not in Love really put me off her writing for good, sadly. Biggest surprise? I've got two on this list. Voyage of the Damned by Frances White, which I found incredibly creative. It did have a little bit of an Agatha Christie tone to it, and the characters in general were just intriguing and different to anything else that I'd read this year. And then Sandwich by Catherine Newman, if only because I can really relate to the characters, especially Rocky, the main character. I really related to her on so many levels. We're of a similar age, we're going through similar things physically and biologically, and I just couldn't help but feel incredible empathy for her. Favourite new author, debut or new to you? Already mentioned her. Sandwich by Catherine Newman made me go back and purchase her other book, which is called We All Want Impossible Things. I'm just looking over there because it's on that particular shelf. But that Sandwich encouraged me to go back and pick up her first novel, because there was just something about her writing that I really felt to my bones. Newest fictional crush? I don't really have one. I used to have fictional crushes all the time. In fact, I've done a video on my bookish boyfriends and was I misjudging when in my youth. But I don't think I have them anymore. Occasionally I'll think, oh, I like the characteristics of this particular man, or I love that character. But I don't sit there and think, oh my God, I really want to marry him or anything else. I think I've not grown out of it. I just don't think it's me anymore. So I don't have a fictional crush. Newest favourite character? This is probably an off-the-wall one, and it is Helen from The Expectant Detectives by Kat Ailes. She's a dog, as in an actual dog. She is crazy, energetic, enthusiastic, curious, and in the words of her vet, odd. And every single one of those characteristics just speaks to me completely. So my favourite character is actually a dog called Helen. Book that made me cry. Goodbye Birdie Greenwing by Erica Waller. I sobbed, legitimately just sobbed so much when I was reading that book. And as I've said already, if you like to cry, but you also like the slight comedy, you like development of characters, you love growth, building relationships and all of those other things, then definitely read that one. And Under the Whispering Door by TJ Klune, which I didn't want to cry, but I kind of knew I was going to when I read it, because he's got an incredible way with words, and there's no denying that. Book that made me happy. Dead and Scone by Suk Panu. I do love myself, as I've already said, a good cozy mystery, and this was his first time, Suk Panu's first time writing a novel. Even though he created the character, wrote a TV series and a radio series, this was the first book in the Mrs. Sidhu Investigates series. And then Every Time I Go on Vacation, Someone Dies by Catherine Mack. Another cozy mystery in a way, but also it's essentially, she is, it's almost meta. She is the main character in the book is an author who has created this rather glamorous series about a woman who goes and solves murders with her partner. It turns out that her partner is actually based on someone she was dating, who was also married at the time. And when they broke up, she wrote this book, and he became a very, very popular character. So he's kind of blackmailing her into giving him money, and she wants to kill off the character. Of course, at the same time as they're traveling to promote her next book, someone is trying to kill the man who is blackmailing her. And it's a whole story about going into their past, and there is going to be a series about it, another book, not a TV series as far as I'm aware. But it is very comedic and also serious at the same time, but and follows love. There's multiple themes throughout the book, but it is comedic. 12. Most beautiful book you've bought so far this year. Okay, there are two. Actually, that's a lie. There are multiples. I have got an entire large number of shelves of special editions that are stunning. So one of them is Sunbringer by Hannah Kaner. The copy of it is exquisite. And another one is When the Moon Hatched by Sarah A. Parker. Both of these books are exquisite to look at. But that's not to say that none of the others are. I mean, if you can see the ones I've got, they are stunning. I could write an entire long list. And even the books that I'm getting rid of, such as The Fairy Loot and Tempest of Tea by Hafsa Faisal, is a beautiful copy of the book. I just don't want to keep it. So yeah, there's a large list of books that I actually really enjoy looking at. What books do you need to read before the end of the year? I've got books that I've got to read before the end of this month. In fact, I've got a couple of books I've got to read before the end of this week. But I have got 8 of my 24 for 24 still to read, including The Maiden by Kate Foster, Fairy Tale by Stephen King, The Book That Wouldn't Burn by Mark Lawrence, and The Other Bennett Sister by Janice Hadlow. I also have 3 books to read from my 1-star reviews for July. In fact, I've got all 3 of those still left to read. I just haven't wanted to pick them up. And I've got a couple of books to read, one for an interview and one for a book tour that need to be finished before the end of this week. So yeah, I've got a fair few books that still need to be read. How about you? How are you doing do you have a 24 for 24? How are you doing on your reading targets, or do you not set one? I set one and I've already passed it because I always set a very, very low one just in case, because I've learned my lesson from setting the 150 book target and then getting to 50 books and realizing it's the day before Christmas and there is no way I'm going to read another 100 books before the end of the year. So I set my target incredibly low. It's actually set at 52. So I have exceeded that already by 20, and I am going to probably increase my limit, if only to see the sparkles and glitter fall down over the numbers again. But I'll probably set it at around 90. Being realistic, I do read a lot, but I don't read as much as many people. And I think that the higher I set my goal, the more pressure I'm going to put on myself. And that's not what reading's about. It's about enjoying yourself. So that was my mid-year freak out, and I could quite easily freak out about the fact that I've got several books to finish before the end of this month, and we are now, as I record this, it is the 17th of July, so we are more than halfway through. How is everything going for you? And thank you again so much for joining me. If you haven't subscribed already, I would love it if you did so, and please press a like down on this video, because it would be great if other people could find it too, because I'm really trying to build my audience here for no other reason than I want to find more bookish people. So until next time, bye.